The rain tapped gently against the hostel window, droplets racing each other down the glass. It was almost midnight, and silence had swallowed the entire building. I sat alone at my desk, surrounded by books I barely wanted to read. My first semester at university had just begun, and while the campus was buzzing with people during the day, the nights in the dormitory were suffocatingly lonely. That was until I met Faison. From the very first day, he had been the type of person who seemed impossible to dislike. Charming, easygoing, and always carrying a wide grin that made people want to trust him. We sat next to each other in class, exchanged notes, and within a week we were eating every meal together. You know, Faison had said with that mischievous sparkle in his eyes, I think we're going to be good friends. Real good friends. And I believed him. In a strange new place, I thought I had found someone I could lean on. Subtle oddities. At first, nothing seemed wrong. We laughed together, complained about assignments, and stayed up late in the dorm cracking jokes. But slowly, I began to notice things. Little things. Faison knew too much. Once, I had spoken quietly to another classmate about a personal problem with money. The next day, Faison casually repeated my exact words back to me, smiling as if it was some inside joke. Another time, I scribbled something private in my notebook and tucked it away. Hours later, he teased me about it, words I never spoke aloud. Man, how do you know all this? I asked him once, half joking, half nervous. He chuckled. Come on, you're my friend. I pay attention. Isn't that what friends are supposed to do? I laughed along, but a part of me tightened. The way his eyes gleamed when he said it, too sharp, too knowing, made me uneasy. The abandoned room. Our hostel was old, parts of it crumbling, with certain wings left unused. One of these places was a library annex, a large room filled with broken furniture and shelves thick with dust. Nobody went there. Nobody wanted to. But one evening, Faison suggested it. Let's study there, he said. It's quiet. No one will bother us. Reluctantly, I agreed. When we walked in, the air was heavier, as though the dust itself pressed down on us. The lights flickered faintly, and shadows stretched unnaturally across the walls. This place feels weird, I muttered. Don't be scared, Faison said, smirking. Sometimes the truth reveals itself in places like this. The word sent a shiver crawling down my back. I wanted to laugh it off, but I couldn't. His tone wasn't playful. It was serious, almost reverent. The first disturbance. One rainy night, Faison left the dorm, saying he was going to grab a drink from a vending machine. I stayed behind, scrolling through my phone. Minutes passed, then an hour. Still, he didn't return. At 2 a.m., a faint knock rattled my door. I got up, hesitated, and opened it, only to find the corridor completely empty. The lights buzzed overhead, and the silence was so deep it hurt my ears. Shaking my head, I muttered, probably some idiot playing around. But when I turned back, my heart froze. At the corner of the room, near the window, a shadowy figure stood. Tall, thin, its outline strikingly similar to Faison's. Faison. I whispered, when did you come back? The figure didn't move, didn't answer. My pulse quickened. I lunged for the light switch, flicked it on, and the corner was empty, completely empty. Before I could process it, the door creaked open. Faison walked in, holding a cold soda bottle, smiling. Bro, you won't believe it. The machine jammed. Took forever. I stood frozen, staring at him. He looked at me, puzzled. What's wrong? You look like you saw a ghost. I swallowed hard. If he had been downstairs this whole time, then who, or what, had been standing by my window? Denial. I wanted to dismiss it. Maybe my tired eyes had played tricks. Maybe the shadows in the room had twisted into something that resembled him, that was easier to believe than the alternative. But deep down, I knew, the way the figure had stood there, so solid, so deliberate, was not my imagination. The next day, I tried to tell myself it was nothing. Faison was still his usual self, joking around, acting like my closest friend. Yet something in me had shifted. I couldn't look at him without remembering that silent figure by the window. And then, things escalated. Whispers in the dark. It started with whispers. At first, I thought I was overhearing conversations in the hall, but the voices didn't belong to anyone I recognized. Late at night, lying in bed, I'd hear faint murmurs, like someone speaking through the walls. Sometimes my name, sometimes things I had never told anyone. One night, the voice said clearly, "He isn't who you think he is." I shot upright, scanning the room. Faison was asleep on the other bed, breathing evenly, his back turned to me. I wanted to wake him, to ask if he heard it too, but something stopped me. What if the voice was right? The change in his eyes. Over the following week, I began to notice something unsettling in Faison's eyes. When he laughed, they didn't crinkle the way they used to. They remained cold, calculating. When he looked at me, it wasn't the gaze of a friend. It was the gaze of someone studying me. Once, I caught him staring at me in the reflection of a glass window. His expression wasn't friendly or warm. It was blank, almost predatory. When I turned, he smiled instantly, as though he hadn't been caught. That night, I couldn't sleep. The notebook. The breaking point came when I found my private notebook open on his desk. It was a small, worn-out journal where I scribbled my darkest thoughts, the kind you don't share with anyone. I had hidden it carefully under my mattress. And yet, there it was, pages flipped open, his pen resting on top of it. My chest tightened. "Faison, why do you have my notebook?" He looked up casually. "Oh, this? I found it. Thought I'd read it." "You found it?" "It was under my bed." "So what?" he replied with a shrug. "We're friends. No secrets, right?" I wanted to scream at him. Instead, I just grabbed the notebook and shoved it back under my pillow. His eyes followed me, unblinking. That night, I dreamt of him standing over me, whispering words I couldn't understand. When I woke up, the taste of dirt was in my mouth. That was when I finally realized Faison wasn't just a bad friend. He was something else entirely. Something I wasn't ready to face. But soon, I would have no choice. The days after the notebook incident felt heavier, as if the air itself had thickened around me. Every moment I spent with Faison gnawed at my nerves. His smile no longer comforted me. It unsettled me. His laughter seemed too loud, too rehearsed, like an actor performing for an audience I couldn't see. I kept telling myself to distance from him. But distancing wasn't simple. We lived in the same dorm, shared classes, even ate at the same cafeteria table. He was woven into every part of my new life, and ripping him out would leave me isolated again. But that isolation suddenly seemed safer than staying close. The night in the annex. One evening, Faison suggested we study in the abandoned library annex again. My first instinct was to refuse. Every part of me screamed no. But he was insistent. "Come on, man. It's quiet. We'll get through half the syllabus in one night." Against my better judgment, I went. The annex was just as eerie as before, shadows clinging to the corners, silence pressing down like a physical weight. We sat across from each other at a cracked wooden table, our books spread out. For a while, he acted normal. We studied, exchanged a few jokes. Then, I noticed his eyes drifting away from the pages. He wasn't looking at his book. He wasn't even looking at me. He was staring into the darkness behind me, unblinking. "What are you looking at?" I asked, my voice breaking the silence. Slowly, a grin spread across his face. "You didn't hear it." My stomach turned cold. "Hear what?" He leaned forward, his tone a conspiratorial whisper. "Your name." It said your name. I whipped around. The annex was empty. Dust, shadows, and broken shelves. Nothing more. I wanted to leave, but Faison grabbed my wrist tightly. Too tightly. His nails dug into my skin. "Don't be scared," he said. "They only talk to those who listen." His eyes glowed faintly in the flickering light, and for a moment I wasn't sure if I was sitting with my friend, or with something wearing his face. Strange behavior. After that night, I began noticing changes in Faison's behavior. He would vanish for hours, sometimes all night, and return acting like nothing happened. When I asked where he had been, he'd give vague answers, around or nowhere important. Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night and find him standing by the window, just staring outside. Not moving, not blinking, as if waiting for something. Can't sleep? I asked once, trying to sound casual. He turned his head slowly, too slowly, and smiled. Just keeping watch. For what? He never explained. The whispers returned. The whispers in my room grew louder. Sometimes I could make out full sentences. He is not who you think he is. Leave before it's too late. Your blood will feed him. I covered my ears, pressed my pillow over my head, but the voices always found their way in. And sometimes they laughed, a cruel, mocking laughter that echoed inside my skull until I thought I would go insane. When I tried to tell Faison about it, he just smiled. You're finally hearing them too. That's good. That means you're chosen. Chosen for what? I demanded. You'll find out soon, he said, and walked away, leaving me trembling. The confrontation. I couldn't take it anymore. One night, I decided to confront him directly. Faison, I said, my voice shaking. What's happening? Why do I hear these things? Why do you know so much about me? And what the hell is wrong with you? For a long moment, he just stared at me. The friendly mask was gone. His expression was empty, his eyes dark and unreadable. Finally, he spoke. You trusted me. That's why it works. What works? He leaned closer, his breath cold against my face. The bond. You let me in. That's all I needed. I shoved him away, my heart racing. You're insane. He laughed, low and guttural. Maybe. Or maybe you're the insane one, talking to shadows at night. Maybe you've already lost your mind. His words cut deep because a part of me wondered if he was right. Were the whispers real? Or was my paranoia eating me alive? The dream that wasn't. That night, I had the worst nightmare of my life. I dreamt I was lying in bed, unable to move. Faison stood over me, his face shrouded in darkness. He leaned down, whispering words in a language I couldn't understand. His fingers pressed into my chest, cold and heavy, as though trying to reach inside. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. Then, suddenly, his face was inches from mine. His eyes weren't human anymore. They glowed red, burning like coals. His smile stretched unnaturally wide, splitting his cheeks. I woke up gasping for air. Sweat drenched my sheets. My chest ached where his hands had pressed down. And when I turned my head, Faison was sitting on his bed, wide awake, staring at me. You talk in your sleep, he said softly. They like that. I nearly vomited from fear. Signs of escape. From that moment on, I knew I couldn't stay. I had to get away from him, away from this hostel, away from whatever had attached itself to me. But every attempt failed. My requests to change rooms were denied. Too full, the administration said. When I tried sleeping in the common lounge, Faison found me there and dragged me back, laughing it off as if I were a child running from nightmares. You don't understand, he told me once. You can't leave me. Not now. Not ever. The final night. The night it all came to a head. The rain outside was heavier than ever. Thunder shook the building, and the lights flickered on and off. I lay in bed, wide awake, staring at the ceiling. The whispers were loud tonight, louder than ever before. It's time. He's ready. Feed. My chest tightened as panic consumed me. Then I heard the creak of the other bed. I turned my head. Faison was standing, but he wasn't himself anymore. His shadow stretched unnaturally along the wall, twisting and contorting like a living thing. His smile was wide, too wide, his teeth gleaming in the dim light. Don't fight it, he whispered. You let me in. Now, you're mine. I scrambled out of bed, heart hammering, and backed into the corner. The whispers rose into a deafening chorus, chanting my name, demanding my submission. Faison stepped closer, his movement slow, deliberate, almost inhuman. I was never who you thought I was, he said. And soon you won't be who you are either. The lights went out. The last thing I remember was a sound of laughter, his laughter, but layered with dozens of other voices, echoing through the darkness. Aftermath. When I opened my eyes, it was morning. My bed was drenched in sweat. Faison's bed was neatly made, as if he hadn't slept there at all. His belongings were gone. No clothes, no books, not even a trace of him remained. I asked the warden about him, but he frowned. Faison? Who's that? There's no one by that name in this hostel. My blood ran cold. I had lived with him for weeks. I had eaten with him, studied with him, suffered with him. How could they say he never existed? But the deeper I looked, the more terrifying it became. His name wasn't on any register. No one else remembered him. Not a single classmate, not a single teacher. It was as if he had never been real. And yet, when I checked under my pillow, I found a note in his handwriting. It read, "Good friends never really leave. See you soon." That was the day I stopped believing in friends. Because sometimes the people who smile the widest are the ones who were never human to begin with. The hostel incident was something I tried hard to bury, but it followed me like a shadow. After transferring out of that place, I swore I'd never again get too close to anyone. Friends, I told myself, were nothing but masked people until you saw the monster underneath. That promise lasted about 3 months. When I moved into a new city for an internship, I needed a place to stay. Renting alone was too expensive, so I ended up in a shared apartment with 3 other people my age. 2 of them were decent enough, quiet, busy with their own lives. But the third was Ali. Ali was my roommate. At first, he seemed harmless. He was the kind of guy who was overly friendly right away, the type that always wanted to know where you were going, what you were doing, who you were talking to. "It's just so we can look out for each other," he'd say, his grin plastered across his face. But there was something strange about him. Something I couldn't put my finger on. Too much attention. Ali had a habit of mirroring me. If I bought a new shirt, he'd buy the same one. If I mentioned I liked a certain band, he'd claim it was his favorite too. When I changed my phone wallpaper, he changed his to match. At first, I thought it was just coincidence, or maybe he was trying too hard to bond. But one night, when I opened my laptop, I noticed something that made my stomach twist. His wallpaper wasn't just similar. It was identical to mine, down to the private folder names I kept on the desktop. When I asked him about it, he laughed. "Oh, come on, don't be so paranoid. It's just fun." But I couldn't shake the feeling that he had somehow been inside my laptop, watching. Over time, Allah's obsession became suffocating. He was always there. If I went out to eat, he tagged along. If I went to the library, he'd happen to be there too. Even late at night, when I pretended to be asleep, I'd sometimes open my eyes and catch him staring at me from across the room, motionless. "Why are you awake?" I asked once, my voice trembling. "Just making sure you're okay," he replied, but his tone wasn't concerned. It was flat, hollow, the basement. Our apartment complex had a basement, an old, damp storage area where tenants kept unused boxes. Hardly anyone went down there. One night, after misplacing a bag, I went searching for it. To my surprise, I found Ali already there, standing in the corner of the basement, facing the wall. "Ali!" I called out. Slowly, he turned around. His face was pale, his eyes wide, as if I had caught him doing something forbidden. Then, without a word, he smiled. "I was waiting for you," he whispered. A chill ran down my spine. "What do you mean waiting for me?" He stepped closer, his grin stretching unnaturally. "You always come here, even when you don't know it." I bolted upstairs without another word. The phone. The final straw came when I discovered my phone recording me while I slept. One morning, I checked my gallery and found dozens of videos, hours of footage of me lying in bed, tossing and turning. I never set it to record. My hands shook as I scrolled through the files. The worst part wasn't just the recordings. It was the last one. In it, the camera captured me sleeping peacefully until a shadow moved across the room. The shadow leaned over my bed, close enough that I could hear breathing through the speaker. And then, clear as day, Allah's voice whispered, "Don't worry, I'll never let you leave me." At that moment, I realized the same nightmare had started again. Just like Faison, another friend who was not who I thought he was. But with Ali, I wasn't even sure he was human. Confrontation. I didn't want to believe what I saw on my phone, but there was no denying it. The voice, the shadow leaning over me, it was Ali. That evening, when he returned from work, I confronted him. My hands trembled as I held up my phone. "Why are you recording me while I sleep?" I demanded. Ali's smile didn't falter. "Because you look peaceful then." I froze. "That's not an answer. What the hell is wrong with you?" He tilted his head, as if studying my anger like a specimen. "You don't understand. You're the only real friend I've ever had. I don't want to lose that." "That's not friendship," I snapped. "That's obsession." For the first time, his expression darkened. His lips pressed into a thin line, and his eyes glimmered with something I couldn't name. "Call it whatever you want. You belong here. With me." The room seemed to shrink around me. His words weren't just desperate. They were a warning. Sleepless nights. After that, I couldn't sleep in the apartment. I started locking my bedroom door, but that didn't stop the fear. Every creak of the floorboards, every rattle of the pipes felt like Ali creeping toward me. I even considered sleeping at a friend's house, but deep down I knew it wouldn't matter. He'd find me, because Ali always found me. One night, I woke up to scratching at my door. Gentle at first, then more insistent. "Open up," he whispered through the wood. "I know you're awake." I held my breath, praying he would go away. The scratching stopped. Silence stretched for what felt like hours. Finally, I heard his footsteps retreat. But in the morning, when I opened the door, I saw deep gouges carved into the wood, long, deliberate marks that spelled out one word. Mine. The hidden room. I knew I couldn't stay. I began searching for another apartment, but every listing was too expensive or too far. I felt trapped. One afternoon, when Ali was out, I decided to check the basement again. Something about the way he had stood there, waiting, haunted me. The air was damp and foul, the stench of mold clinging to my throat. I moved deeper into the basement, my phone flashlight slicing through the dark. That's when I noticed it, an old wooden door half buried behind a stack of boxes. With effort, I dragged the boxes aside and pried it open. The hinges groaned like they hadn't been touched in decades. Inside was a small, windowless room. The walls were covered in photographs. Photographs of me. Some were normal, me walking to class, eating, sitting on the couch. Others were taken while I slept. My face slack, vulnerable. But the worst ones were the ones I didn't remember. Pictures of me standing in places I had never been. Dark alleys, rooftops, the middle of the street at night. My eyes in the photos were wide open, but blank, like I was sleepwalking. Or worse, like I wasn't in control at all. My knees nearly gave out. This was more than obsession. This was possession. His return. I bolted upstairs, desperate to pack my things and leave. But when I opened the door to my room, Ali was already sitting on my bed. "Find something interesting down there?" he asked, his grin stretching too wide. I couldn't breathe. "What are you doing? Ali? What the hell are you?" He stood slowly, his shadow stretching unnaturally across the walls. "I told you, I'm your friend, and friends don't leave." I backed toward the door, but he was faster. In 2 steps, he was in front of me, his face inches from mine. His eyes weren't normal anymore. They shimmered black, bottomless. "You let me in," he whispered, echoing Faison's word from months ago. "And once I'm in, you can't shut me out." The escape. Something primal surged inside me, fear so strong it gave me strength. I shoved him hard, surprising even myself, and darted out of the room. He laughed behind me, a sound that followed me like claws. I didn't stop running until I was out on the street, gasping for air under the flickering street lights. I never went back. The next morning, I returned with the landlord and the police, demanding they see the basement. But when we opened the door, the hidden room was gone. The wall was solid concrete, no sign of photographs, no sign of anything. And Ali? The landlord looked at me strangely. "There's no one by that name renting here." Just like Faison, the aftermath. I tried searching for him online. No records, no social media, no trail of his existence. Yet, late at night, when I scroll through my phone, I sometimes find new pictures in my gallery. Pictures of me sleeping. And in every one of them, a figure stands just behind me in the shadows, watching, waiting, closing reflection, first phasing, then Ali. Two different faces, two different names, but the same chilling truth. These weren't friends. They weren't even people. They were something else entirely, something that wears a mask of friendship that waits for you to trust and then claims you as its own. I don't know how many of them exist. Maybe one, maybe many. But I've learned one thing the hard way. The worst horror doesn't come from enemies. It comes from friends who were never really friends at all. Moving in, college was supposed to be the fresh start I desperately needed. After what happened with Ali, I wanted nothing more than to bury those memories under piles of assignments, lectures, and the chaos of dorm life. The campus was lively, buzzing with students hauling boxes, parents giving tearful goodbyes, and laughter echoing through the courtyard. I kept reminding myself, this is different. This is normal. This is safe. My dorm room was on the fourth floor of an old brick building. The hallway smelled faintly of bleach and old carpet, and the fluorescent lights flickered in a way that set my nose on edge. But when I opened the door, I was pleasantly surprised. It was small but cozy, with 2 beds, 2 desks, and a window that overlooked the campus courtyard. My new roommate, Hamza, was already there. He stood up as I walked in, his smile wide and friendly. "Hey, you must be the new guy. I'm Hamza." His handshake was firm, his laugh easy. For the first time in months, I felt like maybe this friendship thing could actually work. Easy days. The first few weeks were surprisingly good. Hamza was funny, helpful, and always eager to hang out. He introduced me to his friends, invited me to late-night study sessions, even shared his snacks when I forgot to eat. Everyone liked him. Professors, classmates, neighbors. Hamza had an effortless charm that drew people in. But beneath that surface, I noticed small things. Sometimes, when I came back from class, I'd find my notebooks rearranged, as though someone had flipped through them. Other times, I'd wake up to see Hamza sitting at his desk in the dark, staring at me. When I asked about it, he'd laugh and say, "Relax, bro. I was just thinking." I wanted to brush it off. After Ali, I was paranoid about everything. Maybe I was just projecting. But then the whispers started. The whispers. It was late, around 3 a.m., when I first heard it. I'd been tossing and turning, unable to sleep. Hamza's breathing was steady on the other side of the room. Then I heard it, soft, almost too faint to catch. A whisper. At first, I thought he was talking in his sleep. But as I listened, the words became clearer. "He doesn't know, he doesn't see." My heart thudded. I sat up, straining to hear. Hamza's body was still, facing the wall. But the whisper continued. Soon he'll belong to. I froze. The voice wasn't coming from Hamza's mouth. It was coming from under his bed. Night terrors. The next day, I tried to act normal. I told myself it had to be a dream, a trick of my exhausted mind. But the more I ignored it, the worse it got. Some nights I'd wake up to find Hamza standing by the window, muttering to someone I couldn't see. Other nights, I'd wake to find him sitting on my bed, watching me sleep. One night, I mustered the courage to ask, "Hamza, do you ever, talk in your sleep?" He looked at me strangely. Then he smiled. "Maybe, but sometimes it's not me who's talking." The hidden drawer. Weeks passed, and my nerves were fraying. I started skipping meals, skipping classes, anything to avoid being in that room. But no matter where I went, Hamza was always nearby, always smiling, always watching. One afternoon, when he left for the gym, I decided to search his things. I knew it was wrong, but I had to know. I rifled through his desk, his drawers, his backpack. At first, nothing. Then I noticed something odd. The bottom drawer of his desk seemed shorter than the others. I pulled it out completely, and behind it was a hidden compartment. My stomach knotted as I reached inside. Inside were photographs. Dozens of them. All of me. Some were taken around campus, me walking to class, eating lunch, sitting in the library. But others were taken inside the dorm room. Me sleeping. Me sitting at my desk. Me in the shower. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped them. Among the photos was a small notebook. On the cover, in black ink, was my name, the journal. I flipped it open, my pulse hammering. Page after page was filled with notes about me. Likes tea more than coffee. Walks faster when nervous. Talks in his sleep sometimes. But as I turned the pages, the notes grew darker. He doesn't know yet. He belongs here. He won't leave. Not this time. The last page made my blood run cold. Tonight. The real Hamza. The door creaked open behind me. I spun around, the photo spilling from my hands. Hamza stood in the doorway, sweat dripping from his forehead, his smile wider than ever. Looking for something, he asked softly. I couldn't speak. My throat was dry, my body frozen. He stepped closer, his shadow stretching across the room. You weren't supposed to see that. Not yet. His eyes glimmered, dark and endless, just like Allah's had. And in that moment, I realized the truth. This wasn't just another bad friend. This was the same presence. It had followed me here. Cornered. Hamza closed the door behind him, the click echoing louder than it should have. The photos lay scattered at my feet like broken glass, each one proof that I wasn't imagining things. I backed up toward my bed, my heart racing. What is this, Hamza? Why do you have these? He crouched down, calmly gathering the photographs. His fingers moved tenderly over them, as if they were precious treasures. These are memories, he whispered. Proof that you're mine. You don't understand how long I've been waiting for you. I wanted to scream, but my voice came out as a choked whisper. You're sick. His smile flickered. Just for a moment, I saw something raw and violent beneath it. No, I'm chosen, and so are you. The shadows returned. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay stiff in bed, eyes wide, as Hamza's breathing filled the room. But after hours, it changed. At first, I thought he was talking in his sleep again. Then I realized it wasn't his voice. Low, guttural whispers rippled from beneath his bed, like dozens of mouths speaking at once. He sees now. He belongs to us. He cannot run. My stomach dropped. I pressed my pillow over my ears, but the whispers burrowed through, crawling into my head. Then came the weight. Something pressed down on my chest, invisible but heavy. My breath hitched. I couldn't move. I couldn't even scream. From the corner of my eye, I saw Hamza sit up. His face was blank, his eyes black voids. He watched me struggle, and then he smiled. Don't fight it, he whispered. It only hurts if you fight. Escape attempt. The next morning, I was gone before Hamza woke. I skipped classes, ran across campus, and begged the housing office to move me. The clerk frowned. We don't have any record of a student named Hamza assigned to your room. I froze. What? That's impossible. He's been living there for weeks. She shook her head, pulling up the files. Your room has been listed as a single since the semester began. You don't have a roommate. The air went out of my lungs. If Hamza wasn't officially registered, then who? No. What? Was he? I packed my things that night, ready to run. But when I returned to the room, Hamza was waiting. The confrontation. Leaving already? He asked, sitting cross-legged on my bed. His voice was calm, but the edges trembled, like a storm barely contained. I gripped my suitcase. Stay away from me. His smile grew. You think you have a choice? You think leaving will change anything? I told you before, this isn't the first time. It won't be the last. He stood, and the room darkened, shadows bleeding up the walls like ink in water. The lights flickered, and the whispers returned, louder now, echoing from every corner. He belongs. He belongs. I clutched the doorknob, but it wouldn't turn. My skin burned where my hand touched the metal, as if the door itself was alive and holding me in. Hamza's voice rose above the whispers. Don't you see? They chose me to find you, to keep you. You're not just a friend. You're the prize. The revelation. The shadows in the room twisted, taking shape. Figures, faceless, gaunt, stretching unnaturally tall, emerged in the corners, their bodies bending and snapping like broken puppets. I stumbled back, my suitcase falling open, clothes spilling across the floor. The figures circled, whispering in unison. He is ours, not this time. He won't escape again. Hamza stepped closer, his eyes now fully black, his grin splitting wider than a human mouth should. You think Ali was the first? Or Faison? No, we've been with you all along. Different faces. Same truth. My chest tightened. This wasn't coincidence. Every friend. I thought I had every person who got too close. They weren't people at all. They were it. One entity. Many masks. And I had been chosen. The last stand. Something inside me snapped. Maybe it was anger, maybe pure survival, but I refused to let them win. I grabbed the desk lamp, yanking it from the wall, and swung it hard. The bulb shattered against Hamza's face. Sparks burst, shadows recoiling in a violent hiss. The figures shrieked, their whispers turning into screams. The room shook, posters tearing off the walls, windows rattling like they'd explode. Hamza stumbled, his grin faltering for the first time. You can't fight us forever, he howled. But I ran. I kicked the door until it gave way, the wood splintering beneath my desperate weight. I tore down the hallway barefoot, other students peeking out of their rooms in confusion as I bolted past. Aftermath. The next morning, I demanded again to be moved. This time, the housing office agreed, though they still insisted I had lived alone. When I returned for the rest of my belongings, the dorm room was empty. My things were gone. The furniture was rearranged, as if no one had ever lived there. And Hamza? There was no trace. But sometimes, at night, I still hear the whispers. When I close my eyes, I see shadows moving under the bed. And I know one thing for certain. This isn't over. Closing reflection. College was supposed to be a fresh start. Instead, it was a reminder. It doesn't matter where I go, how far I run, or who I trust. They'll always find me. They don't just want friendship. They want ownership. And maybe they already have it. Returning home. After college, I thought moving back to my family's house would feel safe. After everything with Faison, Ali, and Hamza, I wanted stability, a place that was familiar, comforting. The house had stood for decades, its brick walls weathered but strong. It was a place I grew up, the place I laughed, cried, celebrated birthdays, and dreamt of escaping. But stepping inside again after years away, it didn't feel like home anymore. The air was colder than it should have been, even with the heater running. Dust floated in the sunlight like ash, settling on furniture covered with sheets. My parents had moved out to a smaller place, leaving this house to me. I walked through each room, memories tugging at me, but behind them was something else, an unease I couldn't shake. It felt like the walls were watching. The old bedroom. My childhood bedroom was exactly as I remembered it. Posters still clung to the walls, though their corners curled and faded. The closet door sagged on its hinges, and the old wooden desk sat beneath the window where I used to do homework. I ran my fingers across the desk, and a strange chill shot through me. It wasn't nostalgia. It was dread. That night, as I unpacked, I found something in the desk drawer. A photograph. It was me, as a child, sleeping in that very bed. My mouth slightly open, my small fist clenched under the covers. But in the corner of the room stood a shadow. Tall, faceless, watching. The back of the photo was marked with a date, 2007. I hadn't owned a camera back then. Neither had my parents. Strange sounds. The first week was quiet, but not peaceful. At night, the house creaked like it was alive. The floors groaned beneath unseen footsteps. Sometimes I heard voices, low murmurs, just outside my door. I would fling it open, but the hallway was always empty. Other times, I'd wake to scratching at the walls. Long, dragging sounds, like nails raking against plaster. I told myself it was just an old house settling. But I knew better. Because late one night, as I tried to sleep, I heard a familiar whisper. His back, his hours again. The friend in the hole. On the third night, I woke up thirsty and went downstairs for water. The house was silent, the kind of silence that presses against your ears. As I reached the kitchen, I froze. Someone was standing at the end of the hallway. At first, I thought it was my reflection in the darkened glass of the patio door. But then it moved. It stepped forward, and my blood ran cold. It was Ali. Same grin, Same eyes. No. Then it shifted, becoming Hamza. Then Faison. Their faces flickered like masks being tried on, one after another. Finally, the face melted away into nothing but blackness. We never left, it whispered. The lights above me flickered violently, and when they steadied, the hallway was empty. But I knew. They were in this house. The hidden room. I tried to convince myself I was imagining things, but then I remembered something from my childhood. When I was about 10, I once woke up in the middle of the night to see my father hammering the door shut on the basement. He never explained why, just said it was dangerous and I was never to go down there. That memory came flooding back as I stood in the kitchen, the old padlocked basement door staring at me like a day. The lock was rusted, but I managed to break it with a hammer. The hinges screamed as the door creaked open. A foul stench wafted up, damp and rotten. I descended the stairs slowly, each step groaning under my weight. At the bottom was a small, unfinished room. The walls were covered in peeling paint, the concrete floor cracked, and there, in the center, was a chair. On it lay a notebook. I picked it up with trembling hands. The cover was blank, but inside were hundreds of pages, each page filled with one thing: my name, written over and over, in different handwritings, in different styles, some in neat cursive, some scrawled like a child's, some jagged and angry, but all the same name. Mine, the return. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in bed, clutching the notebook, trying to make sense of it. Around 3 a.m., the air grew icy. My breath came out in pale clouds. The whispers began again, louder than ever. You were ours first. You will be ours last. The shadows in the corners thickened, stretching across the walls. They pulled together, twisting into shapes. Faison's face, Allah's face, Hamza's face. One by one, they emerged from the darkness, circling my bed. Their voices overlapped, a chorus of venom. You can't run from family. And then I remembered something even worse. As a child, I used to talk to someone, an imaginary friend. I couldn't remember his name, but I remember the games we played, the whispers in the dark, the way he told me not to tell my parents. That wasn't imaginary. It was them. They had been with me since the beginning. The awakening. I sat frozen on the bed, the notebook heavy in my lap. The shadows pressed closer, their faces flickering between Faison, Ali, and Hamza before collapsing into faceless darkness. You thought you escaped us, they whispered in unison. But this is where you began. This house is where we first touched you. The air was suffocating, thick with their presence. I tried to scream, but my voice caught in my throat. One of the shadows leaned forward, its form rippling like smoke. Its voice deepened until it shook the walls. Do you remember your first friend? And suddenly, I did. I was 5 years old, sitting alone in this very room. Lonely, afraid of the dark. That's when I first heard him, the friend who listened. He whispered secrets only I could hear. He promised I'd never be alone again. My parents thought it was my imagination, but it wasn't. It had always been them. The house shifts. The house groaned around me, walls trembling, lights flickering. The floorboards buckled, and I heard something moving beneath the wood, like hundreds of crawling fingers. I ran into the hallway, but the house twisted unnaturally. Corridors stretched longer than they should. Doors opened into impossible angles. Every window showed only blackness outside. It wasn't my house anymore. It was theirs. From the shadows, the voices taunted me. You invited us in. You fed us your fear. We grew with you. We wore the faces you trusted most. I stumbled into the living room, but the photographs on the walls had changed. Every family picture was gone, replaced with images of me, older, younger, asleep, awake, always watched. And in every picture, the shadows stood behind me, the family secret. I remembered something else then. My father hammering the basement door shut, his face pale, his hands shaking. Had he known? I raced back down to the basement, clutching the cursed notebook. Maybe there was something he left behind. When I reached the bottom, the chair was gone. In its place was a mirror. The glass rippled, and I saw myself, not as I was, but as a child, sitting cross-legged, talking to someone unseen. My lips moved, but the only sound was that whispering chorus. Then, in the reflection, the child me looked up. His eyes were black voids. "You were ours first," he whispered, his voice overlapping with the shadows. "You always will be." The mirror cracked, splintering into jagged lines. From those cracks, hands began to emerge, thin, skeletal hands clawing outward. I screamed and smashed the notebook against the mirror. The glass shattered, shards scattering across the floor. The hands recoiled with a shriek, vanishing into smoke. But the whispers didn't stop. The final visitation. That night, I barricaded myself in my old bedroom. I sat against the door, clutching a kitchen knife, waiting for something to happen. At 3 a.m., the air shifted. Cold seeped through the walls. My breath came in clouds. The voices began again, but softer this time, almost tender. "Don't fight us. We're your only true friends. Others will leave. Others will betray. But we will stay." The bed creaked. Slowly, I turned my head. Faison sat on the mattress, grinning. Ali leaned against the desk. Hamza crouched by the closet. Their faces flickered, melting, reshaping, until all three became one thing, the faceless shadow. It leaned close, whispering into my ear, "You belong to us." Something inside me snapped. I slashed with a knife, the blade slicing through empty air. The shadow shrieked, its form flickering. The walls shook violently, plaster raining from the ceiling. For a moment, I thought I had driven them back. But then, the shadow laughed. The collapse. The house roared like a living beast. The floor split open, revealing darkness beneath. Furniture crashed into the abyss, swallowed whole. I ran, stumbling through collapsing holes, dodging falling beams. The front door loomed ahead, swinging open as if inviting me to escape. I lunged through it, and found myself back in my childhood bedroom. The door slammed shut behind me. The room was pristine, untouched, exactly as it had been when I was a boy. Toys scattered neatly. My small bed tucked in the corner. And sitting on that bed was him, the imaginary friend. Except he wasn't imaginary. He was a shadow, smaller now, wearing the body of the boy I used to see in dreams. His smile was soft, innocent. "You never left," he said gently. "And neither did I." The breaking point. Tears burned my eyes. "Why me? Why are you doing this to me?" His smile widened, his voice overlapping with the chorus. "Because you let us in. You opened the door. And once we're in, we never leave." The walls pulsed with whispers. My own voice echoed back at me, distorted, as if I was speaking with them. I clutched my head, screaming, trying to drown them out. "Leave me alone." The shadow child tilted his head. "But we are you." And then I saw it, in the mirror across the room. My reflection didn't match me. Its eyes were black. Its grin stretched too wide. I dropped the knife. My knees buckled, because in that moment, I couldn't tell anymore if I was fighting them, or if I was them. Epilogue. Reflection. The next morning, the neighbors found me sitting outside the house, my clothes torn, my eyes bloodshot. They said the house was perfectly intact, untouched. No cracks, no collapse, no shadows. Just me. I moved out that same day, leaving the house behind. But I know better now. It's not the house that's haunted. It's me. Wherever I go, they'll follow. They don't need walls or basements. They live in my memories, in my fears, in the friendships I try to build. And every night, when I close my eyes, I still hear them whispering. His ours. He was always ours.